What if everything you believed about love was wrong? What if the very promises we make, the very foundations we build our relationships on, are nothing more than beautiful lies we tell ourselves? What if true love requires something most people would never dare attempt? Today, we're diving into 4 principles that could revolutionize how you think about every relationship you'll ever have. These aren't the feel-good platitudes you'll find in most relationship advice. These are uncomfortable truths. Hard-earned wisdom from someone who understood the psychology of human connection better than almost anyone who ever lived. But here's the warning. This advice might shatter some of your most cherished beliefs about romance. It might make you question promises you've made, assumptions you've held, fantasies you've clung to. Are you ready for that kind of truth? Let's begin. Listen carefully, because this might be the most important relationship advice you will ever hear. Not. Do they make your heart race? Not. Are they attractive? Not. Do you share the same hobbies or values or dreams? Those things matter, but this principle points to something deeper, something more lasting. Can you talk to them? Really talk. Not just exchange information or coordinate schedules or discuss the weather. Can you have conversations that matter? Conversations that generate something new between you? Conversations where both minds are fully engaged, where thoughts spark off each other like flint against steel. Great conversationalists are like midwives. Think about that image. A midwife doesn't create the baby. That's already there, already growing. But the midwife helps bring it into the world, safely, skillfully, with care and attention to what's trying to emerge. That's what happens in real conversation. You don't just exchange preformed thoughts. You help each other give birth to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of seeing the world. You become partners in the act of creation itself. But here's where most people get relationships wrong. They marry for looks. But what happens when those looks fade? They marry for money. But what happens when fortunes change? They marry for status, for security, for 100 different reasons that seem solid, but are actually built on shifting sand. Even the people who say they marry for love, what do they really mean? Usually something like this. I marry you because you make me feel good, because I admire you, because I can't stop thinking about you, because I want to be near you every day. But feelings change. That's not cynicism. That's just human nature. The person who makes your heart skip beats today might leave you feeling indifferent in 10 years. The qualities you admire now might start to annoy you later. The person you can't stop thinking about might become so familiar that you barely see them anymore. And what happens then? When the initial rush wears off? When the novelty fades? When you wake up one morning and realize you're living with a stranger? This is why so many relationships die. Not because people stop loving each other, but because they never learned how to be with each other once the fireworks ended. They built their connection on temporary foundations instead of permanent ones. But conversation, real conversation, doesn't fade like looks or disappear like money. It deepens, it evolves, it becomes richer and more complex as the years pass, and you accumulate shared experiences, shared memories, shared ways of seeing the world. Think about it honestly. What do you actually do with your partner most of the time? You talk, over breakfast, during car rides, while taking walks, in bed at night. The quality of your conversations determines the quality of your daily experience together. If talking to your partner feels like work, if conversations feel strained or boring or frustrating, then most of your time together will feel the same way. But if you genuinely enjoy the way your minds meet, if you find their perspective interesting and challenging and surprising, if you look forward to sharing your thoughts with them and hearing theirs in return, then you have something that can last decades. This isn't just romantic idealism. This is practical wisdom. You're going to spend thousands of hours talking to this person. Make sure it's someone whose mental company you actually enjoy. Good conversationalists make good partners because they can work through problems together. When conflicts arise, and they will, you need someone who can engage thoughtfully, who can listen to your perspective and share their own, who can help you both navigate toward solutions rather than just digging into positions. Bad conversationalists, no matter how attractive or successful or charming, will leave you feeling isolated in your own relationship. Critical issues will go unresolved because you can't discuss them effectively. Resentments will build because there's no real communication to address them. You'll find yourself living with someone you can't truly connect with on the level that matters most. So when you're choosing a life partner, choose someone whose mind you enjoy meeting. Choose someone you can imagine talking to when you're both 70 and everything else has changed. Choose someone who helps you think better thoughts, see things from new angles, become more than you could be alone. Because in the end, that's what a relationship really is. Two minds creating something together that neither could create alone. The conversation you have with your partner becomes the soundtrack of your shared life. Make sure it's music you want to hear for the next 50 years. This might be the most counterintuitive insight in all of relationship psychology, and it cuts against everything our culture teaches us about romance. We live in a world obsessed with romantic love. Movies, songs, novels, they all tell us the same story. Love conquers all. Love is enough. If you really love someone, everything else will work itself out. But this beautiful lie has destroyed more relationships than almost any other belief. Because love, the feeling, the emotion, the butterflies, and passion, and intense attraction, is actually not the foundation of lasting relationships. Friendship is. Let me explain what this means. Not the casual kind where you hang out and have fun together. Not even the deeper kind, where you support each other through tough times. Something more specific, more demanding. True friendship is based on reciprocated goodwill. Two people who both want the absolute best for each other. Not what's most comfortable, not what's easiest, what's best. And here's where it gets challenging, because wanting the best for someone sometimes means being willing to criticize them, to call them out when they're making mistakes, to refuse to enable their weaknesses or blind spots, to care enough about their potential to risk their momentary anger. Most people can't handle this. They want friends and partners who make them feel good all the time, who validate their choices unconditionally, who offer comfort but never challenge. But that's not friendship in the truest sense. That's just mutual flattery, and it doesn't lead to growth for either person. Real friends are willing to have difficult conversations. They're willing to disagree. They're willing to point out when you're being unrealistic, or unfair, or self-destructive. They do this not to hurt you, but because they care enough about your potential to risk your displeasure. And crucially, they're also willing to receive the same treatment from you. They don't get defensive when you offer honest feedback. They don't shut down or lash out when you challenge their assumptions. They recognize that criticism from someone who truly cares is one of life's most valuable gifts. This creates what we might call mutual inspiration and cultivation. Two people pushing each other to become better versions of themselves. Two people committed not just to feeling good together, but to growing together. Now apply this to romantic relationships. Most couples, even those who genuinely love each other, never develop this kind of friendship. They may be attracted to each other, enjoy each other's company, even care deeply about each other's well-being. But they don't challenge each other. They don't push each other toward growth. They settle into comfortable patterns that feel safe, but don't lead anywhere. And over time, this creates a subtle form of resentment. Because deep down, everyone wants to become their best self. When your partner consistently chooses your comfort over your growth, part of you recognizes the missed opportunity. Part of you realizes they're not helping you reach your potential. But when your partner is also your friend in this deeper sense, when they care enough about your development to risk difficult conversations, when they challenge you to be better than you currently are, when they refuse to let you settle for less than your best, then your relationship becomes a vehicle for mutual transformation. You're not just two people trying to make each other happy. You're two people committed to helping each other become the fullest expression of who you could be. You share a higher thirst for an ideal above both of you. And here's the beautiful paradox. This kind of challenging friendship actually creates deeper intimacy than simple romantic love ever could. Because when someone knows you well enough to see your flaws and cares about you enough to help you address them, and when you can offer the same gift in return, you develop a bond that goes beyond surface attraction. You become genuine partners in the project of becoming human. But this requires something most people find terrifying: the willingness to prioritize truth over comfort, to choose growth over ease, to risk conflict in service of something deeper. Most relationships fail not because people stop loving each other, but because they were never friends in the first place. They enjoyed each other's company. They were attracted to each other. They may have even cared deeply about each other. But they never developed the kind of mutual commitment to each other's highest good that creates lasting bonds. So if you want your romantic relationship to last, cultivate friendship within it. Be willing to have the hard conversations. Be willing to challenge your partner when they're not living up to their potential. And be grateful when they do the same for you. Because in the end, love is a feeling that comes and goes. But friendship is a choice you make every day. And that choice, consistently made by both partners, is what creates relationships that don't just endure, but actually make both people better. The couples who last aren't the ones who never disagree. They're the ones who care enough about each other to disagree well. They're the ones who understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let your partner settle for mediocrity. That's friendship. That's partnership. That's love that actually transforms lives. This is going to be hard to hear, because it challenges one of the most sacred assumptions of romantic culture. We live in a world of wedding vows that promise eternal love, of Valentine's cards that declare, "I will love you forever," of romantic movies where the ultimate expression of commitment is the promise that feelings will never change. But this is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. You cannot promise to feel something. You can promise to do something, but you cannot promise to feel something. Because feelings are not under your conscious control. Think about it honestly. Can you decide to feel hungry right now? Can you decide to feel sad or happy or angry simply by willing it? Can you manufacture love for someone you're indifferent to just by promising to do so? Of course not. Feelings arise from complex interactions between your psychology, your circumstances, your history, your biology. They're responses, not choices. They happen to you, not because of you. So when someone promises to love you forever, they're making a promise they cannot possibly keep. Not because they don't mean it in the moment, they probably do. Not because they're lying or manipulating, they're probably sincere. But because they're promising to control something that cannot be controlled. And this sets up a terrible dynamic. Because if love is supposed to be forever, then any change in feeling becomes a moral failing. Any decrease in passion becomes a betrayal. Any shift in emotional intensity becomes evidence of broken promises and failed commitment. This is why so many relationships end in bitterness and blame. People make promises they cannot keep, and then everyone feels betrayed when human nature asserts itself. But here's what's worse. These promises actually make relationships less stable, not more, because they create pressure to maintain artificial emotional intensity instead of allowing natural evolution and deepening. Real love isn't a constant feeling. It's a dynamic process that includes periods of intense connection and periods of relative distance, moments of overwhelming passion, and moments of quiet companionship, times when your partner seems like the most fascinating person in the world, and times when they seem disappointingly ordinary. This is normal. This is human. This is healthy. But if you've promised that your feelings will never change, then any natural fluctuation feels like a crisis. Any decrease in intensity feels like the relationship is failing. Any shift in emotional weather feels like the end of the world. So here's the alternative, a promise you can actually keep. Instead of promising to always love your partner, promise to always act lovingly toward them. This is brilliant. Because while you cannot control your feelings, you can control your actions. While you cannot guarantee emotional intensity, you can guarantee respectful behavior. While you cannot promise that passion will never fade, you can promise that kindness will never disappear. Listen to this carefully. For as long as I love you, I shall render to you the actions of love. If I cease to love you, you will continue to receive the same actions from me, though from other motives. Think about what this means practically. Even if romantic feelings fluctuate, and they will, you can still choose to be kind, respectful, considerate, generous. Even if passion dims temporarily, and it might, you can still choose to prioritize your partner's well-being, to treat them with dignity, to honor the life you've built together. This isn't dishonesty, it's maturity. It's recognizing that sustainable relationships are built on choice, not just feeling. On commitment to action, not just commitment to emotion. And here's the beautiful thing. When you remove the pressure to maintain constant emotional intensity, you often create space for feelings to fluctuate naturally and even return stronger than before. When people don't feel trapped by promises they cannot keep, they often find their capacity for love actually increases. Many relationships go through periods where romantic feeling fades temporarily. But if both partners continue acting lovingly, continue being kind, continue being considerate, continue prioritizing each other's well-being, the relationship often not only survives, but emerges stronger. Because they've learned something crucial. Love is not just something that happens to you. It's something you do. It's a practice, not just a feeling. It's a series of choices made daily, not just a promise made once. This doesn't mean accepting a loveless relationship. If feelings have permanently soured, if acting lovingly no longer comes naturally, if you find yourself consistently resentful or hostile, then it may be time to end things. But it does mean building relationships on a foundation more stable than the shifting sands of emotion. It means promising what you can actually deliver. It means creating space for feelings to evolve without treating every change as a crisis. The couples who last, aren't the ones whose feelings never change. They're the ones who continue choosing each other even when feelings fluctuate. They're the ones who understand that sustainable love is as much about commitment to action as it is about emotional intensity. And that's a much more reliable foundation for a lifetime together. Because feelings will change, that's guaranteed. But choices can remain consistent. Actions can remain loving. Behavior can remain respectful and kind and generous. That's not a consolation prize. That's actually the deeper form of love, the kind that transforms lives and builds legacies and creates something beautiful enough to last. This final principle is perhaps the most controversial and definitely the most misunderstood, because we've been taught that love is supposed to be selfless, that putting your partner's needs before your own is the highest form of romantic virtue. But this belief is not just wrong, it's actually destructive to relationships. Let me explain what healthy selfishness in love actually means. It's not about being cruel or thoughtless or indifferent to your partner's well-being. It's about something much more subtle and psychologically sophisticated. It's about recognizing that love itself is inherently selfish. Think about what happens when you fall in love. You don't just appreciate this person, you want them. You don't just enjoy their company, you want exclusive access to their attention. You don't just care about their happiness, you want to be the source of their happiness. You choose this one person out of all the billions of people on the planet and say, "This one. This is the one I want to share my most intimate thoughts with, my most vulnerable moments, my body, my future." You're not making this choice based on some objective evaluation of who deserves love most. You're making it based on your own desires, your own needs, your own psychological and emotional preferences. And then, if they choose you back, you both agree to exclude everyone else from the most intimate aspects of your lives. You create a bubble of special attention and care that includes only the two of you. You share things with each other that you don't share with anyone else. You prioritize each other's needs above the needs of everyone else in the world. This is selfish, and it's supposed to be. The problem comes when we pretend it's not. When we tell ourselves that love is purely selfless, we create several harmful dynamics. First, we deny the legitimate selfish elements of love, which makes us dishonest with ourselves and our partners. We can't effectively manage something we refuse to acknowledge. Second, we create impossible standards that lead to guilt and resentment. If love is supposed to be completely selfless, then anytime you prioritize your own needs or desires, you feel like you're failing at love. Third, we actually become more selfish in unhealthy ways, because unacknowledged selfishness tends to express itself through manipulation and passive aggression rather than honest communication. Here's what healthy selfishness in love looks like. It means being honest about your needs and desires rather than pretending you don't have any. It means asking for what you want instead of expecting your partner to read your mind and then resenting them when they don't. It means maintaining your own identity, interests, and friendships rather than losing yourself completely in the relationship. It means continuing to grow as an individual rather than making your partner responsible for your entire emotional well-being. It means setting boundaries and expecting them to be respected. It means saying no sometimes, even to someone you love, when their requests conflict with your genuine needs or values. Most importantly, it means recognizing that you can only give what you actually have. You cannot love your partner from an empty cup. You cannot support their growth if you're neglecting your own. You cannot be truly generous if you're constantly depleting yourself. This is why the most loving thing you can do is often to take care of yourself first. Not because you don't care about your partner, but because you care enough to show up as your best self rather than as an exhausted, resentful, depleted version of yourself. And here's the paradox. When both partners are appropriately selfish in this way, when both are taking responsibility for their own needs and happiness while also caring for each other, the relationship actually becomes more generous and sustainable. Because neither person is expecting the other to be their entire source of fulfillment. Neither is sacrificing themselves in ways that create hidden resentment. Both are contributing to the relationship from a place of genuine fullness rather than desperate neediness. Consider the alternative. Someone so selfless that they notice no one around them, not even those who love them. This person is so detached from personal desire that they're actually incapable of real relationship. They see only distant, unreachable ideals instead of the flesh and blood human beings who are trying to connect with them. The point is that some degree of selfish investment is necessary for genuine connection. You have to care about getting your own needs met in the relationship, or you won't have the emotional resources to meet your partner's needs. You have to maintain your own sense of self, or you won't have a self to offer in relationship. The goal isn't to eliminate selfishness, it's to balance it with genuine care for your partner. To be selfish enough to maintain your own well-being and integrity, and generous enough to prioritize your partner's well-being alongside your own. This creates what we might call equal partnership, two whole people choosing to build something together, rather than two incomplete people trying to complete each other through relationship. And that's the foundation of sustainable love. Not self-sacrifice that breeds resentment, not selfishness that ignores the other person's needs, but a mature balance where both partners take responsibility for their own fulfillment while also genuinely caring for each other. Because in the end, the demand to be loved is indeed arrogant, but it's also human. We all want to be loved. We all need connection and intimacy and care. The healthy response isn't to pretend we don't have these needs, but to own them honestly while also being willing to meet our partner's needs in return. That's not pure selflessness. That's not pure selfishness either. It's something more complex and sustainable. Two people choosing each other again and again from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. And that choice, made daily by two people who understand both their own worth and their partner's worth, is what creates love that lasts. These 4 principles might not sound as romantic as traditional love advice. They might challenge some of your most cherished beliefs about what love should look like. They might make you uncomfortable with their emphasis on practicality over passion, choice over feeling, honest selfishness over impossible selflessness. But they're more honest than most relationship advice, more practical, more likely to actually create the lasting intimacy that most people are seeking. Because love is not just a feeling that happens to you. It's a craft you can learn. It's a practice you can develop. It's a series of choices you can make wisely or poorly. The principles we've explored today are about making those choices wisely. Choose someone whose mind you enjoy meeting, because that's where you'll spend most of your time together. Cultivate friendship within romance, because that's what sustains connection when feelings fluctuate. Promise actions rather than feelings, because that's what you can actually control. And maintain healthy selfishness, because that's what allows you to give from fullness rather than emptiness. These aren't pretty lies that make you feel good temporarily. They're difficult truths that can make your relationships genuinely better. They're insights that can help you build connections on foundations solid enough to last. The question now is what you'll do with these insights. Will you apply them? Will you have the courage to prioritize substance over surface, growth over comfort, honest partnership over romantic fantasy? Will you choose to love wisely rather than just intensely? Because that's what this is really about. Not just having a relationship, but having a relationship that makes you more than you could be alone. A relationship that challenges you, supports you, and helps you become the fullest expression of who you're capable of being. That's the kind of love worth seeking. That's the kind of love worth fighting for. And that's the kind of love that these principles can help you create. The greatest relationships aren't the ones that feel easy. They're the ones that make you better. They're built not on promises you can't keep, but on choices you make every day. They're sustained not by constant emotional intensity, but by consistent, loving action. And they're created by people brave enough to face uncomfortable truths about human nature, wise enough to build on solid foundations, and mature enough to love from a place of strength rather than desperation. That's the path to relationships that don't just survive, but truly thrive. The choice is yours.